I just lost David. Okay. All right. Welcome. Welcome. And we'll start off with a blessing for studying Torah. Because that's what we're going to do. And it's considered a divine commandment. So we'll do that. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And since I haven't translated that in a long, long time, right? It means, blessed are you, O Lord, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has sanctified us through his commandments and commanded us to study Torah, which we are about to do. So I'm going to go into a share so you'll be able to see what we're doing. Okay. So this particular page, of course, this is the text of the Torah in the Hebrew. This is an Aramaic translation, quite ancient. And the reason why is because when Jews moved to Babylonia, the language of Babylonia, this is like in 586 BCE or BC, when the first temple was destroyed, Nebuchadnezzar hauled everybody, pretty much every able-bodied person out to Babylonia. And in Babylonia, they spoke Aramaic. And just like so many Jews now aren't able to be fluent in Hebrew, they were fluent in Aramaic. And this is Aramaic. However, the thing I should note is that very cleverly, this is Aramaic written in Hebrew script, the Hebrew using the Hebrew alphabet. Aramaic has its own alphabet, but this way, at least the Jewish people could have a sense, because the words are in Aramaic, but it is actually Hebrew letters. As you can see, they're very similar to these ones. And here is the Rashi. We are studying that during the week. Okay, and this is a more modern, much more modern commentary. Rashi is around, I believe, 11th, 12th century. Torah Temimah is more like 19th century, 19th, 20th century. And that's what we're looking at today. And this is where he does his commentary. His name is Rabbi Baruch Halevi Epstein. That was his name, the author. And what he does is he takes relevant passages from rabbinic literature, and he puts them into more understandable Hebrew or Aramaic. And then underneath, he has his own personal comments on what he has just quoted above. So it's quite an extensive commentary, and I think I would say it's very well respected. So we're in chapter, here we are, second letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Bet. We're in chapter 2, and we're talking about a river issuing from Eden, right? And we talked about the river, this river that is called Pishon. It is probably the Blue Nile, and it talks about how it goes around the land of Havilah. And if you look at the actual course, if you look on a map at the course of the Blue Nile, you'll see how it goes around in its traversing the territory there. And it says Asher Sham Hazahav, where there is gold. The Zahav Haaretz Hahi Tov. And it says, and the gold of this land is good, is Tov. And it goes on to say Sham Bedolach, there also is Delium, the Eben HaShoam, and the onyx stone. But what we're going to look at is this comment. We read this one the last time, and it's of course online, but we're on to this one here now where it says Vezahav. He's going to talk again of this comment that it says Vezahav ha'aretz hahi tov, the gold of this land is good. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, said Rabbi Isaac, Rabbi Yitzchak, and this is Aramaic, Tava beveta, right? Which literally means if it's good in the house, Tava beliviata, it's good on the road. And that's literally what this means. When I looked up, I think in possibly there's a translation of this particular section of Torah Temimah by Rabbi Sharfstein. This is how he translated it. He said, if it's easily secured, it's easily redeemable. But I think for our sakes, it's very handy to translate it literally. If it's good in the house, it's good on the road. And this is a quotation. This is where he tells you where he gets this particular citation. And there are two Talmuds. There's the Babylonian Talmud, which is the one more commonly studied. And there's also the Yerushalmi, the Talmud of Jerusalem. It's a whole different series of commentaries and discussions. And it's the one on Yoma, which means discussing, it means the day, referring to Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. And the way the Yerushalmi is subdivided is Perek Daled, that's chapter 4. Halacha Daled, those chapters are then subdivided into what are called halachot, laws. So halacha Daled, meaning, this is an abbreviation mark in Hebrew, and it means law number 4. So if we wanted to check it out ourselves, we could do it. And this little footnote here is down to Rabbi Baruch Halevi Epstein's own commentary, and that starts right down there. Okay, so he says, Iyain Mashe Katuv, he says, check out what is written. Beresh Ot HaKodem, he says at the beginning of the previous comment, that's this comment here, because it's also talking about Zahav Haaretz Hahitov. Okay, so he says, check it out. And it says there, just very quickly, it says that Zahav, that is gold, Zahav Tov, and Zahav Tov, and good gold, Shnei Minim Hey. There are two types of gold. Two types of gold. So that's what he says there. So let's take a look. Umefaresh, right? And he explains, or this is explaining, ki mitkunat hazahav shahu ma'at hakamut. And the reason why is when it talks about pure gold, he says pure gold is there's less of a quantity that you need of pure gold to smelt it down and purify it. And in fact, he says that the definition of good gold, he's mentioned this, is the fact that when you smelt it, you don't, there's no dross. There's no dross at all. And so, of course, that means that when you have this gold, you don't have to collect that much of it to have a very fine amount of it and valuable. V'rav hati echut, and so it says that it's small in quantity, but has a lot of quality. It's let's see, I think that was wrongly spelled. Let me make sure. Let's get rid of that. Okay. But there's a lot of quality to this. Alto gedola, right? So it says, and its use is great. In other words, you don't need very much to have great use of it. But you don't have to, it's not like you have to carry a lot of it to get a lot of use out of it because it's so valuable. So you have a very small amount that's of very great value. So there's not a lot, you don't have to try and find large spaces in which to store it, okay? Lehatmin, in other words, to store it away, velishmor, and likewise to keep it safe. In other words, you can find small little areas to put it so that people aren't going to discover it, as opposed to a large amounts of gold that isn't as pure. Hein babayit, whether or not in your house, v'hein baderech, or if you're taking it and transporting it somewhere. So this is another understanding of good, of why it's called good. Ukemoshe katuv b'midrash rabbah, and as is stated, this is another rabbinic word. Then we have the Talmud. We also have books that are called midrashim, works that are called midrashim, and there's a specific midrash, a major midrash. Midrash rabbah actually means the great midrash, which is a commentary. It's calling it a commentary is using the word quite loosely. I would say it's a very deep literary analysis of the Torah, of the 5 books of the Pentateuch, and also the Chamesh Megillot, the 5 scrolls. So the 5 scrolls are Song of Songs, Ruth, Ecclesiastes, Lamentations, and Esther. Those are the 5 scrolls. So there's a Midrash Rabbah on all these. Kan Tova Gedolah. Okay, so here it says Midrash Rabbah Kan. So in commenting on this verse in the Midrash Rabbah, because it's organized according to the verses of the Torah, Tova Gedolah Chalak HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a major benefit the Holy One, blessed be He, gave the Olamot to His world. He distributed a great benefit to His world, and this is an example of gold. Adam poret zahuv echad, a person, an individual, takes out one gold piece, v'hum motzi mimenu kama yitziot, and he's able to afford a whole bunch of expenses with this one gold piece, this small gold piece. So it's an interesting commentary on things that are valuable, and of course, the nature of gold being so valuable has to do, I suspect, not only from a utilitarian point of view, it's also something that's quite beautiful, but it would appear that gold, by and large, is considered of greater value than, say, silver or copper. And in some ways, it feels as if it's somewhat arbitrary as well. But to this day, of course, gold is considered extremely valuable. So, going on, unless there's some comment, if any of you have any questions about what we just read to this point. Okay, so going on to the next verse, let's take a look here. Okay, right. Okay, so the next verse is, he doesn't have a comment on it, but it's going into the Torah verse. It says, V'shem ha'nahar ha'sheni Gichon. Remember, there are 4 rivers. The second river's name is Gichon, hu sovev et kol eretz kush. And that is the one that goes all around the, so let me look at this. Okay, all right. And it goes all around Ethiopia. That's called Eretz Kush. So, all right, let's keep going. So we're talking whether or not I was mistaken, and this because this is actually sounds more like the Blue Nile than the first one. So that possibly Pishon is the main Nile, but we are talking about the Nile and the Blue Nile. That I think has been established, right? And let's go on. Here we go. V'shem hanahar hashlishi Chidkel, and the name of the third river is Chidkel. We would call it the Tigris. Hu haholech kidmat Ashur. It goes east of Assyria. Hanar haravi'i hu Prat, and the 4th river, that is Prat. Prat is the Hebrew term for the Euphrates. You can hear how Euphrates and Prat are very, very similar. So let's take a look here at Chidkel. Let's see. Yes, here we are. Chidkel. This is the Tigris. My Chidkel. So the question is, what is this word Chidkel? Why is it called Chidkel? Amar Rav Chisda, said Rav Chisda, Shemeimav Chadim. So there's the Chidkel, Chad, right? They are crisp, the Kalin, and there's the Kal, right? So he sees the word Chidkel in a way as an abbreviation of these 2 concepts of crisp, and Kalin would be light. And this is now from the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, Brachot. That's a tractate, the very first tractate of the Babylonian Talmud, and it deals basically with blessings that we have. We find them in our prayer book, etc. And this is page Nun Tet. This is page 59 and the B side. So the Babylonian Talmud is, again, organized differently. The page numbers are standard, and the one side of the page is the A side, and the second side of the page is the B side. So let's take a look, and here we have 32. Let's take a look. Klomar. So this, remember, he said it's Chad and Kal. right? It's crisp and it's also light. Klomar, that is to say. Now I can tell you that the word charif generally means spicy, spicy, as in the sense of hot, spicy. So apparently but it doesn't mean hot in temperature. It means hot in a spicy kind of way. So charif b'ta'aman in their flavor. So I have to think when Sharfstein is translating it as crisp, it sounds like a pretty decent attempt to translate this. But it must mean that they have this delicious, sharp flavor, the kalim laguf, and they're good, they're easy on the body. In other words, they get absorbed easily and they're very good. They're very really fine water. She'ein machbidim et haguf. They do not cause the body to feel heavy. They aren't heavy on the body. But machbidim would mean to make the body heavy. Kesheshotim utam, when they drink them, when people drink them. The gam kalim b'mishkal, and at the same time, they could also be light in weight. In other words, again, in terms of the volume, their weight is light. Uma shehichriach lachazal likal drashat milazor. So now comes a question, because we don't have this particular interpretation necessarily for the other rivers. And so he's asking the question, he's onto a new idea. Notice the period over here. And he's asking, why did Chazal, meaning our sages of blessed memory, what made them to include this, or to include a drasha, an interpretation of Milah Zo? Why do they feel it necessary to give this interpretation, or to interpret the word? It's based on the fact that people who understand and are familiar with the Hebrew language, that kol shem b'lashon hakodesh, he says, because every noun, or certainly every word in lashon hakodesh, in Hebrew, shorsho lo yoter migimel otiyot. The fact is that Hebrew is based on triliteral roots, meaning that the roots in Hebrew, the root words in Hebrew are 3 letters, right? And of course, Hiddekel is 4 letters. V'asher hu yoter darshuhu chazal. And he says, so that when they come across a word that has 4 letters that are root letters, because we also have letters that you could call utility letters, okay? But here we have a word that has 4 letters to it that are part of the root. Kamo hashemot. Okay, so he's now going to give you examples of Hebrew where the Hebrew has 4 letters. Talpiyot, right? So again, they're taking tal. This is tal. So I'm going to call tel. Tel is a hill, right? Shakol ponim elav, to which everyone looks, everyone observes this particular hill or this mountain. And that's the P here that they're saying ponim. And he gives the citation there. Again, tal talim, right? Tal talim. So we got tal and tal. Tale talim. So it means perhaps the most essential, the essence of dews, Dews. And again, the citation, Eruv in the Talmud. Galmuda. So we've got this Galmud, Gimel, Lamed, Mem, and Daled. Those are the 4 root letters of this, right? Gemula, its fate. Da is to be seen there, right? Damesek. So again, all those 4 letters are root letters. Dole umashke. So dole is to bring up water, right? To bring water up. Umashke, and that's to water. In other words, like think of a deli is a pail. So in other words, to bring water up and then water the flocks. Malkush, that's a name of a rain. It's which occurs in a particular time of the year, And he says, again, 4 letters, mal and kash, right? So mal has to do with like rubbing, softening. Kash, kash is straw. So in other words, it softens the straw is how I would try to translate that. And again, a different tractate. Karpas, that's the word that we use for celery, right? But interesting, it must be used in a different context. I'm only familiar with it meaning, excuse me, parsley. Parsley. I think I said celery. I meant parsley. So maybe they are describing parsley as karim, which would be pillows, shel pasim of stripes. So maybe it's describing how parsley looks. I'm not sure. Otherwise, maybe it's a whole different word entirely. Mamzer, Mamzer, again, 4 letters. Mum-zar. Mum is a blemish. Zar is a strange or an zar. It's strange, but it also has to do with like peculiar in that sense, and that's referring to someone who the translation would be a bastard. Okay. Avrech. Avrech, again, 4 letters. Av Verach, meaning a father. This is referring to Joseph. This is what they called in front of him. In other words, he was a father, meaning because he gave such incredible advice to Pharaoh. And Rach would mean soft, meaning young. So Avrech means, essentially that he was a someone of such wisdom and at the same time so young. And obviously he's giving you tremendous number of examples, right? Kad kod, right? Kad and kad, kedain or kedain, that it's an abbreviation for like this and like this. And shat nez, totally different. This is like 5 letters, right? And shua, carded, teve, woven, venuz, and twisted. And we're talking here about blended material, blends of wool and linen, which are forbidden, interestingly enough, by the Torah. The harbe kahena, and he says, and lots more like this. And this is where we're going to stop today. And before I stop the recording, please feel free to ask any questions you might have. Any questions? Okay, in which case I will stop the recording. Here. Second. Okay. So I'll stop the share first and then stop the recording.